And in the Beantown area, they will be going around through the areas distributing dinner. So that is good. And he said, if you want to contribute, you can also contact him at Junkanoo World. That's right on top of the hill, right by where I will give his number tonight before we sign off if anybody wants to contribute or help him out with that. So tonight, again, we folks, it's FIE Junkanoo Rush from an administrative view. And so I had the man number, and I had it in every phone. But you know, when you switch phone, these Google thing, they say the Google thing don't work. That don't work, man. That's wait for certain number. But folks, I'd like to my guests to introduce themselves tonight and just tell us a little bit about yourself briefly and your role in the administrative end of Junkanoo. I guess we're going to start with ladies first. So we're going to start with my golden buddy. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
What group John Adley was with? No, way back, man, way back. I remember rushing. Right.
Oh, that's
most qualified.
That's
there you
most
go.
qualified.
Most qualified.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Yes.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Yes. And some of our failures and where we need to be moving forward after we get out of this pandemic and going into next year. And so I think the biggest thing, there's so many dots. And so as we progress through the evening, we will run through them. Most recently, having been involved with, as the chairman for the parade management team, and being deputy to the now minister, Jeff Lloyd, where we ran a very, very successful parade. I think that was 2016. The years are going by so quickly. When we had a very, very successful year, we made some changes to the parade time for one of the very few issues with judging and the like. Guests and people, and Jeff was chairman and I was deputy. So from 2006 to present, I guess you want to say, I'm grateful for being involved in the administration of the parade. There are many highlights. Sure, maybe you can speak about some of them later, but there were many, many highlights over those years. Had the great fortune to be working very, very closely with one of our other panel members, Kishlane, who, as a matter of fact, if it wasn't for her, I don't think Jeff Lloyd and I would have been where we were. Upon her recommendation, we were asked to come back, and so then the following year they fired us. in the true fashion of Junkanoo, man.
And make sure define they. Thank you.
Yes. No. Kishlane is right. There were those who wanted us back. Thank you very much for the correction. Yes, there were those who wanted us back. And then there were those who did not want us back. And so this is some of the nuances of Junkanoo and managing a massive cultural event that this is. Working with the different personalities, just managing personalities is a big thing for Junkanoo, just by itself. And so I'm very pleased to be here this evening, Ms. Roll, and that's me.
Go ahead, Kishlane. Kish? Are you there, Kishlane?
Yes, sorry, my mic was mute. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kishlane Smith. I am the co-chair of the National Junkanoo Committee. I am a member of the world famous, the Valley Boys. But more importantly, I am a Junkanoo. And I'm happy to be here this evening, and I've been afforded the opportunity to be in such an esteemed presence with these quite notable men. I am the only female on the panel, but that's okay. I grew up in Junkanoo, where I was always one or two of the only women around, and we were able to maneuver and get things done. Junkanoo for me began at a very young age. Charmaine can certainly attest to those many, many days and nights in a very, very cold shack or house, and where we learned to paste, and we learned to cut paper, and we learned to color, which was fun. But more importantly, we learned the importance of camaraderie and the importance of the passion of our culture. And from that embryonic stage in Junkanoo of just learning, I always wanted to understand the dynamics behind the learning of it and to get in a picture of each segment of Junkanoo. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes what we see during a parade is the end result. But I was always extremely curious of what happens at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. And so I was fortunate to have been afforded again an early opportunity to join the National Junkanoo Committee in the early 2000s. Sorry, in the late, no, this was in the 90s. I joined the National Junkanoo Committee. I think Brendan was on the committee then because Boldy was still there. Brendan, I'm right? Yeah, I remember that. Brendan, you oh gee, we talking AJ. No, sorry, Brendan. You know, you way old, way old. But this was in the 90s when I joined the National Junkanoo Committee because Bones Hepburn was still around. Remember him?
Correct. That's correct.
And he was something else. He had Shirley Street on lock, buddy. He was something else. And again, I think I was at that time one of the few women who were on the National Junkanoo Committee, but I saw Junkanoo from a different aspect. And I wanted to understand the definition of what the National Junkanoo Committee meant, because those of us that live on New Providence always seem to have thought that it's just about New Providence. But the National Junkanoo Committee affords you the opportunity to really have a broader scope of the entire Bahamas and to get an understanding of the logistics on the Family Islands, which are quite different, vastly different from here in New Providence. And through that vein, with the National Junkanoo Committee, eventually the JCB was formed. I'm an original member of the JCB, which was called Junkanoo Corporation Bahamas at the time, but the name then changed to Junkanoo Corporation Nassau, and then it changed to Junkanoo Corporation New Providence Limited. I was the first female secretary of the Junkanoo Corporation. And then eventually, again, I became the first female public relations director of the Valley. And now I am the first female co-chair of the National Junkanoo Committee. So through it all, Junkanoo to me it's a fun, spirited excitement that allows you to express yourself in ways unbeknown to you. Because when I put on my costume and like Charmaine say, my eyelashes and that makeup, buddy, listen, I am a different person. That feeling just comes out and just exploits itself. But Junkanoo is my passion. Junkanoo is my love. And I would like to make sure that provisions are in place to safeguard it for future, for our children, our children's children, and to have things properly documented so that there are no obscurities. Sometimes people try to rewrite history. So we need to just, and we'll talk about that later, but Dr. Marshall and I, and Dion Miller, who's the chair of the JCNP, we are fortunate to be a part of another body, the three of us, where we are indeed writing history now on a global level. So that's me in a nutshell, eh?
Okay, so let's go ahead with Dion to introduce himself, please. Dion, go ahead.
Everybody, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're loud and clear, Dion.
I was listening quite intently to the previous conversation. You know, when a young couple is amongst lions, one must humble himself and just listen. Nevertheless, I'm probably the youngest person on this panel. I've always been fortunate to be positioned and to find myself around of knowledge and quality leaders, persons like Kishlin and yourself, folks as well. As a boy, and I've been involved in celebrating Junkanoo on Bay Street since about 1994 as a young boy. As a matter of fact, my first costume for the by none other than the late great who just passed, Mr. Percy Paul. and an obsession for Junkanoo. Um, my forte into administration of Junkanoo came at an early age. When I returned from university back home, and my father, who was perhaps one of the longest serving treasurers of the Saxons, um, would always summon me to conduct administrative work on his behalf, whether it be ordering materials or monitoring materials or delivering materials, etc., etc., etc. So that was when I first started to get my feet wet in regards of an administrative role. Later on, these fellows, Percy Waller Francis and Anton Toonsdains, they invited me as a young person to be around the table and what they say, be amongst the big boys and really get into planning parades and that's such a thing. And my administrative career or lineage really took place from there. For the past year or so, I've been serving as the current chairman of the JCMP, a very interesting role, one that I'm still learning. But I'm just excited to be here to contribute, to hear stories and to share my talents and my expertise to this discussion.
Still there, Dion?
Pass it on to Dwight. I'm here. I'm done. I'll pass it on to Dwight.
Hello? Oh, it's my turn. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're ready for you. Go ahead.
Okay, good night. My name is Dr. Dwight Marshall with the National Junkanoo Committee, along with Ms. Kishlane Smith, right? I've been in Junkanoo
Correct.
since I was 9 years old. Just participating and, like Kishlane said, coming up through the ranks where, you know, from the old school, not that old, but the old school way where you it was a rites of passage in a sense. You didn't just get to get on the road and rush. That, you know, you had to go through a learning process before you could get there. From cleaning the shack to facing the back of the flat back costumes to learning to cut, to learning to pace and all the rest of that stuff and coming up through those ranks. From I was 9 years old. I learned most of my skills actually hanging around the music makers. Although I had an uncle that to go all the way to Masons. So we would hang around the music maker shack and, you know, learn things and watch things. And then, you know, I was able to participate as I got older, going off to university, coming home every year to rush because, you know, it was Christmas without Junkanoo. So I came up in that. Junkanoo was kind of tough because, you know, to all of us being around the sack, you know, and lucky to be an administrator in Junkanoo from those. And yes, and from that post, I was able to get a glimpse of the inner workings of not just preparing for Junkanoo Parade, but Junkanoo for export, traveling around the world and interacting with other cultures and, you know, introducing and, you know, really understanding what exactly it is that we have compared to everybody else. And, you know, I'm one of the founders of the Genesis Junkanoo organization and one of the administrators. So I got to see experience with administration. It's sort of to galvanize everything I knew about Junkanoo. And I didn't want to see it go beyond our borders and being in the presence of these people. I'm realizing the level we're on compared to everybody else, right? So on another committee, which is even more prestigious, and you know, once the news about that is about to break, and again, it's presenting Junkanoo to the international community and having it respected on that level. So Junkanoo, you know, administration, yeah, I realize the potential, and I want to be a part of that movement forward and the advancement of what it is that we have. So, you know, I might be the least accomplished of this prestigious panel. Everybody else, you know, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dwight. Okay, last person, Mr. Hadley. Go ahead, Patrick.
Good evening, everyone. Patrick Hadley. I've been a part of Junkanoo, well, from a very early age, probably around 9 or 10, 7 or 8. I can't really remember, but I've started on. There are all of the various sections of Junkanoo I've been a part of. I mean, people may be surprised, but to know that I actually even know how to beat drum as well. And so, you know, but back in those days, you didn't choose where you wanted to go, where they wanted you to go, and so that was the era that I came up through Junkanoo. But I started off well, before I ended up in the Saxons. Yeah, I sure remember that. Yeah, and so when well, the Soul Makers eventually amalgamated with the Saxons, and so I ended up in the Saxons, but I then had to move where my mentors went, and so from the Saxons, my mentors was wooed over by one Paul Knowles, who wanted to start the Premier Dancers at the time, and the group of us went with Paul Knowles to make that the inaugural rush with the Premier Dancers, and that only lasted one season. And the Premier Dancers dissolved and went back to the Valley. And believe it or not, that's how I ended up in the Valley. But when I got to the Valley, I realized that that's where I should have been from day one. And so, I from that moment made the Valley Boys my home. I ended up in leadership or in administration. It was sometime in the mid-90s, and we had a storm that passed through New Providence, and at the time we were in a shack on Percy Munning's property right there off Wolf Road, and the roof of the shack caved in. And all of our costumes were in the shack, and remarkably, none of them got damaged. Now, but the roof caved in, and so we had to move. Now, the funny thing is that the Claridge Road shack was already finished. Was finished and locked up. It was probably finished about 2 years. But nobody was even, well, let's put it this way. No one could have built up the courage to go and ask Gus to move into the building. And so here it is now. You know, we have all these costumes in this shack. The roof caved in the middle of the building, and everybody's scared to go ask Gus if we could move in Claridge Road.
But there was
so
one
guess who they gave that task to?
Yep. Yeah.
Me of all, I went, if I get to this building, under one condition, that you take responsibility of this building. And when we actually entered the Claridge Road facility, it was just, the building was complete. There was no electrical in the building, no lights or nothing in the building. And so my first task was to electrify the building, and it went from there. And so I took well, I took charge of the building, the shack, and I was asked to join the management team of the Valley Boys, and I was responsible for logistics. Everything, every costume that left that building, that went to Bay Street, I was also making sure that they returned to that building. Every single piece. And so when you were in it, I called sort of boost for an inspiration to the team, and while promoting our country and promoting Junkanoo on an international scale. And I will say to you, and you may not be aware of this, but the Junkanoo moved or propelled Carifta from just a local track and field, no, well, not local, a regional, just from a regional track and field meet to the premier youth track and field meet in the world. Just Junkanoo. Because what Junkanoo did,
responsible for the other Junkanoo parades outside of New Providence, because the JCNP is responsible for the ticketing and the judging of the senior parades here on New Providence. But the National Junkanoo Committee still plays a role in that. Right. Outside of the ticketing and the judging. We have nothing to do with the judging or the ticketing of the senior parade. But because we are an advisory body, the bleachers now, I think, and Dion or Dwight can confirm this, but the bleachers now comes directly from a contract with the government. So that essentially comes under us as well. And we're also responsible for marketing tools and initiatives, which we have taken on in a speedy pace. So to answer your question in a nutshell, the scope of the National Junkanoo Committee from when I was first appointed in the 90s was very broad then, because the National Junkanoo Committee also had bleachers, if you remember those nice rockety bleachers.
Yes, I remember sitting on the 2x6 wooden plank with splinters coming up my butt.
Yeah. And the National Junkanoo Committee also oversaw a lot of the cultural events throughout the Bahamas. But then there came a cultural division, and so some of the tasks were disseminated, and there became other persons and bodies involved, because now I think you have beaches and parks, and then you have the Cultural Affairs Division of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and then you also have a cultural unit who's responsible for festivals at another ministry, which is not a part of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture. So a lot of things have changed since then, but I'll let you finish, and then I'll elaborate further on the actual administration of what it is.
Yeah, I think, Charmaine, when we look at the broad perspective, and I think Patrick touched a little bit on this, even to the point where after it's all said and done, there's still logistics and organization of getting those costumes back off of Bay Street and back into the shack, because there's recycling, there's remodeling, and so there's a lot of inventory, there's a lot of investment in those costumes, and so that's a very big task, and a lot of is so diverse. And as Kishlane alluded, when you start ACNP and then you go to the BEC or BPL as we know it today, and so forth, it is mammoth.
Yep.
Taking on managing. We go out for 5, 6, 7 hours, whatever hours going to be in the bleachers. We're rooting for our group, and we go home. The initial planning, I've recommended that one of my recommendations years ago, that the planning for Junkanoo needs to start in February, right after we have the banquet, and we've gone through all of the passion, and we go to that banquet and we celebrate our wins and our losses and have some fun. We get cracking right away, February, March, and it ought to start that early, and we have seen it over the years with all of the different issues that have occurred, and so that part of it, we have tightened up a lot of those areas over the decades, and I'm very happy to see that some new eyes, some new ears are looking at different aspects.
For the JCN, one of the months actually for myself and the Seri. Nevertheless, the JCMP was incorporated and given the responsibility to take some ownership in the Junkanoo parades. I think it would have first happened under Prime Minister Perry Christie, and then subsequent Prime Minister Mr. Ingram came along and strengthened the JCNP, and so forth and so forth. The JCNP is a collective of all, not all, but the majority of Junkanoo groups on the island of New Providence, where every group has equal shares involvement. We are a private entity, and so we are a private corporation. That, we pay taxes, etc., like any other private corporation. I think that for the JCNP and for Junkanoo's in whole, Junkanoo is sort of at a crossroads, and we're running on several different tracks. And as a community, we need to coalesce and decide where we take Junkanoo. We get those that and for good or bad, their primary focus is only on one aspect of Junkanoo, which is the competition. And then we get those Junkanoos who I would say maybe in a minority, which is not a good thing, that really want to see Junkanoo advance to more than just that competition or that tribalism. And that contingent tends to get drowned out by the contingent that wants to just focus on the parade, the winning, the losing, and that aspects of the parade. But as everyone has said, there's so much more we could do to advance and the development of Junkanoo. I think we're in a very precarious point in Junkanoo, where you see the passion, the levels of passion is just not there. The attention to detail, not there. And so we have to wake up and do some things to change it. I fear that persons with and I see it this year, and this year has exposed it so much, persons with so much knowledge, we've lost a lot of persons with so much knowledge and skill about Junkanoo and everything at Junkanoo, and we don't have a development plan to pass that along. And it's reflective in the type of Junkanoo we're seeing on Bay Street now, where the quality of the product isn't what it used to be 10, 20, 15, 20 years ago. And so I think we're at a crossroads. I think we need a realignment. And believe it or not, I think that realignment starts with us as leaders of Junkanoo. I think the Junkanoo community needs to see that we as leaders are together and unified and moving Junkanoo forward. And that there isn't any personal animosity or bad blood between us, but we're unified. And that starts with better cooperation and communication between all levels of leadership in Junkanoo, be that the JCNP, the NJC, which I think prior to years past, with myself and Kishley and Dwight, formed an excellent nucleus, excellent relationship and share on different projects and ideas. But we have to come together in some sort of body with one clear direction to take Junkanoo to the next level. So that's how I feel about the Junkanoo. But Junkanoo is a lot of work. The administration of Junkanoo is a lot of work, and it's a thankless job because a lot of people only see the end product. And believe it or not, a lot of Junkanoos only are exposed to one aspect of the Junkanoo, that is preparing their costumes and man hours that goes into the planning, the execution of this thing called Junkanoo. And that's how.
And then shortly after that, we got a new house. We thought it was so fitting that everything then fell under one umbrella, because to me, and Dwight can speak for himself, but to me, these titles mean nothing. At the end of the day, what's important is the actual safeguard of our love, our passion, which is Junkanoo.
This closing act for the 8th IAAF groups, and we were sleeping all over the place. Costumes didn't get there on time. I was in a to that point. We told the groups, all right, we have to make this the most notable event. And when we came out of that stadium in that hole, I was so proud. We were on time. And man, so we can do this. And I'm hoping that we can go beyond Bay Street. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement that we need to get. Okay, yes, Bay Street is. We got to do Boxing Day. We got to do New Year's. Okay, but again, the business opportunities. But that's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of effort, and some of us are going to have to. And I think it's going to have to be driven, Kishlane, mostly private sector. I know Barabbas goes to the States doing Junkanoo events. I know a number of other persons go overseas to put on performances, plural. And I think we need to give those persons more support through the likes of all of our talents and all of our resources.
Dwight, do you want to share a little bit about the idea of the commission? Or Dion?
Mike. Right, your mic.
Okay, from one body, from one voice, from one vision. We've seen what, trying to put efforts behind two different arrows. We see the problems that it can cause. Everything you spoke about, everybody's the same way. All of us are on the same page with the same idea. It's as simple as that, but just bring it under one body. If you hear me and Kishlane and Dion in a meeting, you would swear that we are in the same organization because we have the same concerns, we have the same passion. We have to carry these things out. We have to operate from two different organizations, and that's insanity, in my opinion. And that's just me speaking. That's insanity. Yeah, you have the Edmonton trip. You have the Commandos doing this over here. You have Justinian doing his thing over there. You have Barabbas doing his thing over there, and all these other different groups. You have groups in the U.S. where Bahamians who live in the U.S. They have their own separate groups, and everybody is doing things all over the place. And if we can just focus all this effort under one vision, we'll be able to accomplish all these things. But as it stands, we have to go to the NJC meeting. Dion has to go to the JCNP meeting. They're discussing this thing over there. We're discussing this thing over here. We have an idea what we want to do. They have their ideas of what they want to do. And then when we bring it together, there's an argument because you have two different visions. And that's never going to work. That's never going to work. Hence the idea for a commission. It has to be. We have to put people in charge of the internationalization of Junkanoo. We have to put people in charge, and another committee in charge of the archives of Junkanoo and the administration of the parades. And we're going to do a festival. So it has to be under one umbrella. This idea that we can advance this thing by having all these different bodies, it's never going to. So that's the first thing we have to do. Trying to define what Junkanoo. We are part of a UNESCO committee that's trying to do something now. One of our biggest challenges was trying to define Junkanoo. Trying to define what Junkanoo is, what the art, the craft, pasting. We're trying to come together and give a standard answer as to what these things are, and we don't have it. There's no place you can go to find the standard answer. And these are the little things that we have to clean up if we hope to move forward. We have to do it as a single unit. It's impossible to do it when you split it. It's impossible.
And Charmaine, I must applaud you also for your Unsung Heroes series that you were doing. You know why? Because we realized in the other committee that we're a part of that, as Dwight outlined, there's very little literature about the forefathers who've paved the way for us to be here now where we are. Very little. And and then we're so reliant on the memory of our seniors. And also, it's very time consuming to document what happened, when it happened, how it happened. And so, in our view, going forward, and this is why Dwight said what he said in terms of like different tiers, there should be an archive, a documented archive of where we came from, where we are, and just a schedule or a landscape or some kind of broad picture of the intent of where we'd like to go. In addition to that, there are so many facets of Junkanoo that are untouched outside of the performance and the participation during a parade that should be captivated. Because look at Junior Junkanoo. Junior Junkanoo fascinates me. The level of creativity that these young people have in our country is beyond any measure that you could ever think of. But they are so eager and willing to want to learn. And so it's important the correct way. And that's why when we were appointed, we wanted to make sure that the authenticity of Junkanoo remains. And in that, we mean to, teach the children to actually fringe their crepe paper and how to paste, as opposed to paying somebody to craft a costume or paying somebody to actually build a costume. And so there are many aspects of it that are untouched and should really be explored in its totality to really, so that Junkanoo can sincerely benefit from everything.
Okay, I think officially Mike has started. Okay, Patrick, I understand you had about 10 points that you had written down. Can you hear me, Patrick?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes.
Well, I mean, just listening to Kishlin and Dwight and Dion about this single organization. To me, it seemed to be taking Junkanoo in the right direction. Both yourself, Charmaine, and Brandon could attest to the fact that one of the biggest inhibitors of the way that we do Junkanoo is that everybody there's a lot of egos in Junkanoo, and every single person seem to have an agenda, have their own agenda, and Brandon, you alluded to the 2016 parade, right? And I may be criticized for this, but why you and the present minister now was so successful is because that was the last group of persons who managed the parade, whose priority was the parade.
That's correct.
They wasn't concerned about the Saxons and the Valley and all that. They wasn't concerned about none of that.
Absolutely.
The only thing they were concerned about is that our mandate is to make sure that we have an on-time parade and make sure that this parade flow. And whoever the groups are who impede on this process, we can deal with.
Yeah, that's correct.
We can deal with. And see, when you come into something with that mindset, you're gonna succeed, because the only thing you're focusing on is your own mandate. This is what I was brought here for. This is what I intend to do.
Best one I've seen.
Well, Patrick, to that very extent, as we talk now a little bit more about those aspects that caused some of that to really happen, during that parade, the prelude to that with the judges, do you know that we suspended, we kicked judges out in the training because they were caught cheating in the exam? And Deacon Lloyd, Deacon Lloyd back then, when he went, he said, no, hold on a minute, we ain't having none of this. But like you said, the mandate, we didn't see Saxons, we didn't see Valley. We just saw a group of persons who were supposed to have been trained to judge a national parade. And those persons, and I can say this without any fear of contradiction, and I don't care, those persons who believed that they were seasoned judges and they were entitled to be a judge. Entitled, imagine, entitled. And so we saw that and we said, no, that wasn't gonna happen on our watch. I can't remember who the first group that came out of that parade on Boxing Day. We had a thought, both Jeff Lloyd and I said, boy, Deacon, don't let nobody know but this thought. We're gonna do it when we get to Bay Street. And I think the Saxons was out first. And we went to them and their management and their leadership team, we asked them to move that costume out to John Bull. Just move it, move that front line. Don't move that to John Bull. And when the Saxons was told to get out the hole with their 2-minute warning, we were already on Bay Street. We were already on Bay Street. And so, just doing some things, that were, you know, and again, Patrick, you were quite right. The mandate was to fix what the former prime minister said. He was embarrassed that the parade before, the season before, you just got to go in and make it happen. Now, mind you, as you know, when you take the bull by the horn, you're going to have those who have this to say and that to say. But that wasn't, I think you put it quite correctly, Patrick. That was, we weren't worried about that. We were focused on just managing the parade. We had multiple meetings with logistics where we walked Bay Street. When we called that meeting, we said, hold on, all y'all who on this committee from the parade management team, you're gonna walk again? Well, Mr. Folks, we walked last week. We'll be walking again. We're gonna call the police. We're gonna call BPL. We're gonna get those lines moved. We're gonna get those spotlights put in the right place. We just have to get it done. And even with all of that planning, we still had one wire coming across Shirley Street. I can't remember what group it was. The costume was so.
That's been there for years.
That very one, Patrick, that's been there for decades. All right? And still today, it is probably still there.
It's probably still there.
And so anyone with a 15, 20 foot costume just can't pass there.
No.
And I had the great idea because it's an electrical wire, and we were going to make, you know, BPL have those insulated pipes that when they pull breakers without getting shock, that we can devise something with a V. We can go right up there as two guys on the end to raise that, let those high costumes go through. I mean, all of that was being thought of after having had that accident with that particular group. Yeah.
Brendan, one of the things that my main mandate was, and I think one of the reasons why they give me that nickname, Judge Judy, my main mandate was that when I first was asked to be the deputy chairman of the parade management team, I was given a piece of paper. You remember they wrote out exactly what our positions were, what our roles were, and I took that. You couldn't tell me nothing else. When you're ready, give me my mandate that you have to step to the side, and I'm now in charge of running the parade. You and my mandate was that I was to have 105 persons with a room filled. And like I always tell a lot of people, from January, when the parade over, January 1st, January 2nd, I was recruiting. So by the time September come, I would have 150 persons, and they would know that I mean business. I don't have no time. If you don't come here with a skullduggery in your mind, you come here to make a difference, to make this thing forward and not backward. And see, the thing about it, a lot of people thought that I ruled with a strong hand, but I knew what my mandate was. I knew what my intention in my heart was to, like we say, I call them the guardian of Junkanoo. What they wrote on those papers determined whether Junkanoo would move forward or move backwards. And my thing was always, listen, any one of my family members could have told you, if you entered Bay Street, you knew what the rules was, and you know you start with -0. So don't expect to get what you don't deserve. You're not going to learn properly or succeed if we keep giving you what you don't deserve. Right. And so that was my mind. Make sure that everybody understood what the rules was. And listen, you can't give me a rule and then the day when I reach on Bay Street telling me you want to change the rule, because it can't work.
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. And that has been, and again, from where the JCNP sits, and I'm very pleased, again, like Patrick said, that, you know, both Kishlane, Dion, and Dwight are on this commission to move us to the next level. I mean, you know, we can put some discussion about yesterday, but our energy has to be about tomorrow.
Right.
And we learn from those faux pas, those mistakes, only to have them as a cue, because the energy needs to be where the three of them are today, where we are looking toward being under one umbrella with one objective. And that objective, like Patrick said, would be, as Jeff Lloyd and I was, one objective, be only interested in getting an organized parade. That's it, nothing else.
And see, once you have your mandate you want, like you say, you pushing straight ahead, you have your mandate, you set to get done. And right now, the mandate is that Junkanoo has to go to another level where we can have some kind of revenue coming in and to be and to rest on. Or the only way I see out of that tribalism being, because even though that we're having here tonight, and I always tell all of my guests, this is being streamed all around the world. You don't know who are watching us. You understand? You don't know who want to invest in us. And so they want where they invest in their money. Even if the tax write off, we have per persons, but if we can't come together to show that we have the capability of moving it to a different level,
Okay,
it won't be different.
what's this example? What's this example? Okay, like you said, you might have somebody who want to invest in Junkanoo, right? Who want to donate a bunch of money to Junkanoo from somewhere around the world,
Yeah.
right? Who do they call? What number do they call? Exactly. That's exactly why we need a commission.
Yeah. Well, Dwight, you know, in 1992, we have a temp invent the wheel, but we can take the wheel and fix it and add a few spokes to somebody has planned. Just put in 1992, the Chris Blackwell Foundation, which Al Colley and I co-chaired, $1. Back to your very question, Dwight, who is going to, where is the organization to this event? I like what they're doing.
Right.
It's making sense, and it's bringing a spirit of a people
Where do
together.
I send it?
And Chris Blackwell bought into it. And he gave Al Colley and I the unfettered right. We signed all of those checks, Al and I. 25,000 went to assisting scholarships, and 25,000 went into to help manage that for Junkanooers. And that was a temp, again, with your commission. I'm hopeful that we can go out and reach out to people of means and those persons who see us as doing something very wholesome for our communities. And we're, and Shaman is right, we are streaming live around the world, keep in-house, and some stuff we have to speak about where we want this to really be. And that, again, Patrick, that template is there. Both Al Colley and I are still alive. You know, pulling on our resources. We have a lot of wealth in this country beyond the Western boundaries, leaving Cable Beach and going to Old Fort Bay and Lightfoot Key. Many persons out there would like to follow the Chris Blackwell example, but none have done so since that philanthropic donation. He wanted absolutely nothing back, nothing. It was $1 million given tax-free. You and I, the Junkanoo community, were able to use that money constructively. In fact, the $50,000, let's make sure, like someone said earlier, don't rewrite the history. The $50,000 caused the prize money for Junkanoo to be bumped because the government didn't have to forego that portion. And so the prize money went up as a result of the $50,000 going straight to the coffers of the winners of the parade.
But I think, and you brought up some interesting points, because you may have somebody that want to donate, you know, somebody that's interested, whose passion is music, somebody whose passion is dance, somebody whose passion is the artistry, right? The visual artistry, and they want to donate to those portions, not necessarily overall. So, and we don't have it itemized. There might be somebody from a dance troupe who said, you know what, I want to give $20,000 to Junkanoo for the choreographed section. Where do you send it? Where do you send it? Who do you have in place to say, okay, you can do that, and this is the breakdown. This is what we got to do with the money, right? We don't have any of that stuff in place. So,
and Dwight, those persons, Patrick alluded to it earlier, they want ethics, they want honesty, and they don't want to hear bickering on Bay Street about all this stuff out there that's going on, all of our internal issues. Because you know what? Hold on a minute now. These people carrying on like this, I know if I can put my money in this.
And then why you give them and then why you give them nobody's cell phone to call them?
That's correct.
They want an office number.
Yeah.
They don't want nobody's cell phone or call this one. This is cell. No.
Yeah. And I think you're on to something, the three of you, Dion, Kishlane, and Dwight, the commission. Patrick, you said it so rightly. I think the commission, or I referred to it some years ago as a secretariat. That's the
Mhm,
word
yeah.
I used some years ago. And that went on deaf ears. I mean, literally went on deaf ears, Patrick. You know, I
And
said, you remember we had up where Eddie Dame's office used to be in the back of
yes, Morrow
um
Castle.
Yeah,
what
Morro
was
Castle, yes.
Morro
Morrow
Castle.
Castle. Yeah, we used to
But
meet there.
that was really a hub.
Yeah,
Everything took place there.
yeah,
Everything took place there.
yeah.
And so I know we want to move in a direction. And Kishlane, maybe again, we don't have to reinvent all of these wheels. We just need to take some of the wheels that worked well and tweak them. I mean, there was a
Agreed.
full staff there, and they worked the entire year.
Yes.
Henderson, Joan
Miss
Henderson.
Hamilton.
That's correct.
Yeah, I remember.
And I can't remember the other lady who did all the programs, and her and Eddie were always at it,
Yes.
but they were at it. They were
Henfield,
at
I
it for
think.
good
Miss
reason.
Henfield. Yes.
Huh?
Uh-huh. Miss Henfield.
Miss Henfield, that's the lady, Miss Henfield. That's her, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I remember.
But they were a spirited lot there, and I think Ronald Sims was up there at one point.
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
And Vola.
I think, yeah, Anvola, that is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Yeah. But again, that was operating like a commission, I guess, in a manner of speaking, operating like a secretariat. And I think, Dion, I hope that you and Kishlane and Dwight can take this and help us do exactly that. Get this thing under one umbrella, man.
Hopefully, it's gonna take some work. I think this lockdown, in a sense, gave us the break we needed,
Okay.
and
Breathing.
I was hoping to use like this time to really come up with some things for people to take a break, step back, and really analyze this thing and see how we can,
Yeah.
once we come back, to address a lot of the issues that we have. Because Junkanoo has to
It
expand.
does.
During the lockdown, right? We saw the amount of talent in the Junkanoo world. We saw some people doing some amazing things with this, with the virtual stuff. And the talent is in Junkanoo. I saw some of the videos that one family did. Amazing stuff, right? I saw all of them did. And
Yes,
why?
yes. I saw, yeah, that is correct. That was very creative, very creative. Yes, I saw that.
So
Yes.
why don't we have a Junkanoo talent? And it's in every group show that Pulse, the choreographed dances for Genesis did. Are we seeing something coming out in this lockdown that's really highlighting the talents of the people in the Junkanoo world? We have to be able to display that. We have to be able to add that to what we have with these two parades, because all of it is Junkanoo.
Right.
All of it is Junkanoo. And if we don't create avenues for these people to be highlighted, we're doing this whole thing a disservice, in my opinion, because the talent is there and it's going to die there unless we decide to bring these things out as well.
Well, Dwight, you're correct. I think we have to guard this as the Bahamian thing, and if we don't do this correctly, and as Kishlane said earlier, we have to leave this for the next 100 years, and so we have to get out of this election 4-year, 5-year planning thing. We have to start thinking 20,
Right.
30, 40, 50 years.
Right.
The one example where this is done so rightly is in Cuba. The Tropicana native show from 1958, ladies and gentlemen, to 2020, or before pandemic, was virtually the same show, moved over decades with new ideas, new lighting, new choreograph, but it is still the Tropicana native expression of Cuba.
Right.
And they are getting 15, 20, 30,000 people in that outdoor / operatic environment, because most of the acts are outside. From 1958 to this very day or pre-pandemic. And so, I'm happy to hear what the three of you are doing, and hopefully, we can see the results of this being manifested by having this commission / secretariat, because I like the word secretariat, but you guys call it commission, that's fine.
No. We were calling it anything. We just wanted to have we wanted everybody to understand the impetus of what it was that we were planning. We didn't care what you call it. We just wanted it to be a body, one body, everything under one body.
Yeah, you see what happens, Kishlane, you're right.
And also too, what we wanted a neutral, independent person to be the chair of that body, so that there'll be some equilibrium across the board for everyone.
Well, it would have to be somebody with a business sense, definitely.
Right, and the
it
skill.
has to be somebody with knowledge of what it would take for Junkanoo to be internationalized. All these things with the resources, with the reach, like Brendan said, the private sector has to become involved. It has to be.
Very
it has to
so.
be. It's going to take the money and fundraising and all the rest of that stuff, and reaching out to the world to, become a part of what it is that we're trying to do. It can't just be just anybody because I've been rushing for 30 years.
And you could only, you could only accomplish that, Dwight, when you have credibility at the helm.
Right, true.
Yeah, that's the only way you can do it, is having credibility at the helm. Yeah, absolutely. And an image of that person and their group that is going to be beyond reproach. That their only goal, like Patrick said, look, I haven't here to manage a parade, man. That's all I here to do. And that commission or that secretariat, we're only here for this bigger picture, whatever these objectives are, and as they're laid out and stated by you guys, at least by you guys initially, and then over the years to be morphed into something more dynamic, because you are the catalyst of this idea and this concept. And so persons need to buy into what you're doing and assist where we can. And the thing about it, money is out there, but people aren't going to spend money where they don't believe the returns are going to be in good stead and getting a good ROI, as we call it. But people who are giving free money, as Mr. Blackwell did, he knew that giving the money to Al Colley and I, he didn't ask for any accounting. He didn't ask for anything. Absolutely nothing. The man gave us $100,000 to spend every year for 10 years. And we need to get that back, Kishlane.
Agreed. All right, Patrick, let me hear what else you have to say, because I have to drop soon.
I think Patrick left. Mr. Folks, where do you see? Yes, it is. Where do you see the future of Junkanoo? I mean, I may have missed a lot of the show previously, but I mean, where do you see the future of Junkanoo?
Well, you missed a part of it. We connected some of those dots earlier. You're absolutely correct. That's what you get for being late.
Hey, I apologize.
But no, the summary of it, paparazzi, is that we have to get out of Bay Street. All of us, we have to think beyond Bay Street. All right, we have to think just as Dwight was saying, and before Patrick left, and Dion is saying, we have to see this thing where every major event internationally, a closing event has to be Junkanoo. Every athletic event, every music event. Why can't Junkanoo, not just Saxons, Valley, Roots, one family, Junkanoo? Why can't we be an opening act? Why can't we be a closing act? And that is for a very expensive fee, along with all of what you and I know that takes place on Bay Street on Boxing Day and New Year's Day. It's a very sellable and marketable event, very sellable and marketable. But we, as Dwight said, as Kishlane said, as Dion has said, and as Patrick alluded, we got to fix some things. We have to fix some things. We're an entity who's going to contract us to send 100 Junkanooers to perform, that when they get there, they're not bickering about where their $50 stipend was for the day, because that's what I went through in Edmonton, to perform until they get their $50 stipend.
And the actually minute questions I get on a weekly basis asking, because there's really nothing documented anywhere. And so I would love to see that. I would love to see, and it's groups, because like look at they were talking earlier.
Almost qualified.
What was Calvin? Oh goodness, most qualified people makers. You had to come tough to try to
That's correct.
beat them. And music was, and then the music makers also were the first Junkanoo group to bring brass to Bay Street or to Junkanoo.
Right.
So there's so much information that's there that we only know verbally, but I know with a mandated task
Yeah,
like a
I just
commission,
want to say that.
you know, a commission, a body of
Yeah,
people can have
that's
just
correct.
that job, you're current
That's
and itemizing future plans for Junkanoo. Then you can have another section, and so then you have one set administrative to travel. If you go to get to one family islands,
Right.
logistically.
Yeah, with the think tank, wanted some way to be able to give government, and so all of that was just
Correct.
right. But we still have information already documented. We still have a lot of these things in place where we can still, like Brendan say, we just have to add to we have these things written in paper. It's just that when we get the secretariat or the commission together, we have all these things already documented. We just have to have persons put in place to finish what we started years ago. Because you know we have a lot of information. That
And let me tell you something. You see Edison Fast Eddie Dames? Fast Eddie Dames have a wealth of knowledge documented. You know, he literally wrote a lot of minutes at every meeting, and he is a well resourced. Like you could ask him something, and that brain of his ticking, buddy. But I admire Fast for that. He's succinct because he takes accurate records, and then he will refer to his records to just bring, you know, some sort of solidification to whatever it is that is being discussed. But I admire that about him, and I've seen him in many meetings, and he's very, very good at documenting. So who should be like interviewed in its totality to really get the information that he has, whether in his head or have to receive copies of it so that it could be properly documented.
May I make a suggestion to the three of you, Dwight, Dion, and Kishlane? And you indicated documentation. Some, I don't know if you paid attention, but last year, I was involved with documenting and acknowledging the hospitality persons who were active at the Nassau Beach Hotel. And I put a team together, and we found the old bartenders, the old maids, the old busboys. And obviously they are on age now. And we ended up doing 3 events, acknowledging the managers, the line staff, and we had a last event as a general come together, and we gave those persons, Patrick, we gave them medals, we gave them plaques and certificates for their contribution to tourism and hospitality at the Nassau Beach Hotel. And Kishlane, you're right. We have an issue in the country where we are not documenting anything. I mean, I hate to see when Claudette Allen dies, who's going to talk about the Dundas Civic Center? Where is it? James Catlin has passed. And to this day, I don't think we got enough praise about his efforts in the arts, period. And so what you three are doing, you're onto something, because we've got to start archiving. And Kishlane, I think you're right. One part of this, and as the question was asked by Paparazzi, well, you know, where you see the thing going in the future? Well, outside of Bay Street, Paparazzi, we have a bigger mission that we must all agree upon. And that is this thing called Junkanoo is indigenous to the Bahamas. Now, many of you, if you've done your history, Belize is doing a similar thing. Jamaica has some kind of knockoff thing of it. The British Virgin Islands in Tortola, I participated. I participated in there in 1978. I took a Junkanoo piece, and I was in a grass skate, and I participated in their quote unquote Junkanoo parade. All right. So we've got to, all of us, And I think, Dion, it's going to come through the efforts of the likes of what you, Kishlane, and Dwight are doing. And of course, with the likes of Charmaine and all of us, the Junkanoo 242 folks on the radio every Saturday, and all of that has to come together, and make it all going in one direction.
Ladies and gents, I have to run. Charmaine, I suggest we do a part 2.
Okay.
We ain't cover plenty stuff.
Yeah.
I agree, Charmaine, because it's a little late now.
Yeah. It was, so good night, everybody. It was a pleasure.
Okay, Dion, night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And good night, everybody. Also, I have to leave. So, Charmaine, if there's going to be a part 2, let me know, please.
Oh, of course. Okay, folks.
Can you hear me?
We're gonna close now, and we probably, if we want to, for next week, we'll finish up next week with part 2.
Okay, definitely.
Okay.
So, folks, I'd like to thank everybody that was here tonight, and it's now that we will try and finish up this. Brendan, we ain't covered the tip yet, man. We ain't covered the tip. 10 questions, and Doc that with another 15 or 20.
No, but Patrick, I don't know. We may have covered some of Patrick's points. I mean, he had 10. We may have covered some of them indirectly.
I really wanted to chime in on the future.
That's correct.
You know,
okay.
Very,
but why don't we
very,
do this?
very,
May I suggest, Madam Hostess? Why don't we do a part 2, Patrick, and we introduce it with one of your 10 points, and we speak about the future.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, because I wanted to answer that as well. So,
all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we hope all of you be safe. Just a reminder that Barabbas will be having his drive the 13th every evening from 7 to 9, and that's on Horseshoe Drive right up there by the Guardian. So if you want to, you can pass through there with your family. And I think that is it for the folks. Like we said, FIE's Junkanoo Rush, on behalf of my producer, Ms. Brighton Roll, and my co-host, Mr. Junkanoo Paparazzi, we say, feel it in your belly. Good night, everyone, and see you next week.
Good night.